Welcome to the final session of the day, our town hall. This is the first time we've done this format, so bear with us. I think we'll be able to figure it out, but know that this is the only thing standing between you and those custom cocktails, so we'll make it snappy. So today we've gotten a ton of really good advice and a lot of really good information. This morning from brand marketers and this afternoon from the researchers and the technologists, as well as a great discourse on creative. For this afternoon, our plan is to kind of bring this conversation into kind of a different place, and that is a practical place. Like, okay, so guys, we're at double-digit growth at this point. How are we going to kick this into a triple-digit growth scenario? What is it that we need to do to take on and affect change at a much faster rate than is happening today? And so to help me explore this, what we're going to do is we've invited some media professionals to help us kick this session off. They're going to share with us their thoughts on this question. And then we're going to raise the lights and ask you guys to participate in this conversation. So rather than note cards, what we're going to do is we're going to press into action several of our board members for the DPAA. They're going to be manning mics and working the room and pulling you guys into this conversation. So to get this started, I'd first like to welcome Pierre, CEO of NEC Display Solutions and founder of VukuNet. Welcome. And next up, John Muszynski, Chief Investment Officer of SMGX Exchange. Welcome. Lee Doyle, President of Client Development of Mindshare North America. Welcome. Thank you. And finally, David Krupp, President of Kinetic US. So if you could give them a round of applause, welcome you guys. So, this is a pretty simple question, and I don't know that the answer is that simple, but I'd like to start with you, Pierre, which is, so what's it going to take for us to take this business from double-digit growth to the next place?
Well, first, is this mic? Yeah. Well, first, thank you, Sue, for inviting me because, as you know, we're a technology company, and sometimes, you see a different purpose to the industry. I mean, obviously, these are three gentlemen that are extreme knowledgeable in this industry, and for us, sometimes when you come from the outside, you can view the business in a different way, and I'm a big proponent of, in any industry, sometimes you get good ideas coming from the outside. So, I am going to use the F word, but not the one that you think I will use. I think one of the issues with this industry, at least, especially from the technology, is fragmentation. And I'm not just talking about any stuff that we've talked about earlier today, but whether it's, on the planning side, the delivery side, the metrics, the measurement, the billing. I mean, I think there's tons of fragmentation, and that, in my mind, that hurts our industry a lot. And I say our industry because we're part of it. We believe in this industry. We think it's a great medium. We wouldn't have spent the last 5 years, investing millions of dollars. And I think that there needs to be a way, and I think that DPAA does a great job. There needs to be a way where we can try to make some standardize some of these issues. And I think that's part of the problem. I realize there's a lot of other problems from advertising and clients, but at least for our side of the fence, that's a big issue that needs to be improved.
Good, good. So John Muszynski,
well,
what do you say?
Let me start by saying my career's taken me through the buying, the planning, the management of agencies, and at the heart of it, I'm a buyer. So I use that as a little bit of a context of what I'm about to say.
That's part of why you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of the whole buying process, but I think right now there is significantly too much focus on getting bought and not enough focus on getting planned. And what I mean by that is we all get evaluated, one way or another based on actually getting the purchase. Us making the buy, the salesperson making the sale, and everyone talks about getting bought. But if we're going to focus entirely or the majority of our effort on getting bought, what we're looking at is condensing our opportunity to impression buys. And we're not getting into clients' businesses and understanding the needs. And Alan talked about it wonderfully this afternoon about getting into the context of it and creating experiences rather than just delivering impressions. And I think the way we're currently operating in this space, we're really not addressing client issues as well as we possibly could. And I know the response is going to be, well, I have a tough time getting in to see planners. I can't get in to see clients because they're too busy. They say that's why they've hired an agency. And I don't deny that. But at the end of the day, you have to start focusing more on client issues and whether or not your platform, your product can actually solve for the client's problems at hand. Without understanding those problems, without understanding those issues, there's no way you can justify your purchase.
So you raise a really good point, though, and that is, you're right, it is hard for folks to get into the planners. So can you give people out here an idea or any suggestions on how they might be able to do that?
Well, I think one of the things that you need to do is you need to get a champion inside the agencies. And in most cases, I think you've got to turn to your contact in the buying world and have them become your champion to get to the strategy folks or the planners. But I think once you get into that forum, and whether you do that in a agency-wide forum or whether you do it one-on-one, you have to talk about what your product delivers. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come in and just talk to me about the great technology they have and how isn't this fancy and interesting, and at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my clients? And I don't think, we have to be aware of what you're selling, but you also, that salesperson has to be able to come in and listen to what we're trying to accomplish and try to understand that, to see if in fact there is a match, because there's not always going to be a match. And we can't always try to force fit something into that solution.
Right. Well, Lee grew up in the planning world and remains in the planning world, so I would expect that you're going to line up with John a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in what John says, and a lot of that responsibility is also on the agencies to do a better job of that, about thinking what the client problem is we're going to solve, but that's not helpful to you guys. I've struggled with this question because on one end, you've got a lot of innovative solutions, a lot of interesting ways to connect with consumers.
Right.
And what clients are ultimately looking for is how can I get my message in front of clients or in front of prospects at that right moment, or the right prospects or more valuable prospects. And somehow or in between those two, we've put a lot of obstacles in getting there. But that said, the things that I see that can be done more from the selling side to help hopefully accelerate that growth. One, and I think it's a variation on what John was saying, start with selling, why we need place-based media to begin with. Too often I see the story starts with this innovative technology that's different than anybody else has got, without kind of setting up the problem that it solves, or what's missing in what we're doing already. So if you start that story with the consumer problem or the client's problem, and here's how we fit into that, that'll bring more money to the sector in general. The second thing I would say there is arm everybody with your story, and this is something we're all struggling with. There's nobody who can tell our story better than us. But the reality is that decisions involve a lot of people you're not going to have access to. And so everybody you do have access to, you really need to put the full story, all the ammunition they need to sell, whether it's their supervisor, whether it's someone else internally, whether it's the media director at the client, whether it's ultimately the marketing person who might be 2 steps removed from who you met with, to basically make the case and have all the facts and figures. The other big thing I see is I think there's a tremendous opportunity for collaboration as an industry. And it relates back to kind of sell the broad medium first and then sell where you fit into that. I see too much sort of competing for out-of-home dollars. And let's face it, the out-of-home pie isn't as big as it probably should be. I think there's a lot of upside there. You're ultimately competing for advertising and media dollars wherever they exist. And I think there's more upside in terms of working collaboratively together to just bring more money into the sector, whether it's through the DPAA, supporting initiatives like this, supporting a presence at other trade initiatives where you might get access to people you can't call on directly and things like that.
Yeah, well, wow, that's a lot, but good. David, you reside, I know your background was from planning at Starcom, and then
Right.
you eventually migrated over to Kinetic and,
Yeah.
and put yourself in that out-of-home world.
Right.
What advice would you give folks in the audience?
It's a tough question. I mean, it really is. I think the gentlemen on the panel are right. I'm a planner, so I almost take a different approach, but the same approach as John does, and Lee does, in the sense that the story of the media needs to get out in the context of why does this matter for a client? And not as a shameless plug, but Maureen did a nice presentation today about Miller Coors, and really the way that was set up, and it took a long time to get there, but when we ultimately started talking about utilizing place-based media for the brands, in the C-stores and in gas stations and on premise, it was about media as a sales driver. That was the story that we wanted to tell. That was the idea that we needed to start to push, and that was the ultimate goal that the client had in mind, and media was the solve for that. It wasn't that it was digital place-based. Digital place-based helped to solve that. There are other things that we've done to help solve that as well. So I think it really needs to be about the story. It needs to be, how do we create the solutions that are necessary to solve what clients are looking for? And I know that is sort of a pedestrian way to look at this, but I think too often, as John was saying, that we look at this as, how do we get this sold? And I understand that. We're all looking for revenue. We're all looking for opportunities to make this industry grow. It's going to grow. It has been growing. But I think the fact of the matter is, it's not going to grow as a vacuum unto itself. It's got to grow in the context of, how does it relate to the other media, and how does it relate to what the clients need to accomplish? And if we don't have that in mind, really, what's the point? They're not going to be interested. The planners aren't going to want to sell it. And frankly, you're walking in pitching something that we don't need. So what I would suggest is, what I would hope for, what I would counsel you on is, there is so much audience data available now. We don't have to just look at demographics. We can start looking at behaviors. We can start understanding how people are utilizing spaces. And if your screens are in those spaces, and you can start to figure out then how that accomplishes a client objective, think about the client first. And then, how does the screen interact with that client's need, and how does it fulfill it? And lo and behold, we've got a solution. And listen, every client planner wants to walk in and rubber stamp somebody's presentation and say, look how smart I am, and this is fantastic. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's a lot of good stuff. I have a few people deployed out there with mics. I'm having a tough time seeing because of the lights. Do we have any questions from the audience?
So drinks.
Over here? No. I think they're more interested in drinks than they are asking any questions.
I'll kick off a question. And gentlemen, thank you for joining us. François de Gasset-William from Zoom Media. We are looking at we agree clearly that we have to listen more. And clearly it's a solution-based to your client needs. Being a former publisher and broadcaster, the world has changed, as we all know. And the consumer now is taking control. And the beauty about it is that if I look at my friends who are still in print, their world has radically changed. And we collectively, but the operators here and the strategists, are bringing solutions that respond to a real need that the brand is looking for. You're saying to us, listen carefully, make sure that you respond to the real need of the brand objectives. Completely concur. Can you help us a bit with the research side? What is it that you're looking for, that your clients are looking for on metrics? Because every time I meet with CMOs, I keep getting the same message of data equals renewal. It's a direct quote, right? They're looking for more and more data points. Help us understand what you need as media strategist on the data side that we could help with.
I mean, I'll start it. I mean, it's a tough one because I think you've made some great strides in doing a better job of quantifying what the real audience for these different platforms is. I think, in some cases, people are hiding behind whatever answer seems convenient. If I look across the clients I've been actively involved in recent years, we've got some that are very committed to out-of-home media in all its forms. The unfortunate thing is even those clients that are spending tens of millions of dollars have a hard time proving the contribution if they get into things like econometric modeling. Why is that? Well, it's a steady, constant state for 12 months out of the year. There's no variation there. So we can't really tease out sort of what its contribution is versus the other things out there. Or conversely, sometimes it's just too small an investment to really be picked up there. I think continuing to bring case studies to light where you do have a clear story about the difference that it made, the contribution it made would continue to help. I don't think there's an easy solution there. Strangely enough, I don't think that's the biggest issue in terms of planners recommending it as part of a schedule. And as much as people will say, well, show me the data, there's also a tendency when clients think something makes great intuitive sense, they tend to support it without asking us to go find a lot of research for it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that sounds logical. No, I don't need a quantitative study to prove it. That sounds like it fits a moment in time where I've more likely got a receptive consumer for my product.
But I would say on the back end of that, because I agree with that, but on the back end of it, I would say we need to be building in studies on behalf of the clients as the campaigns are happening. And it's not, listen, I would just as soon never see another awareness study. I would just as soon never see another purchase intent study. The fact that somebody intends to purchase something doesn't really tell me anything. The fact that they're aware of degree antiperspirant, if they're not aware at this point, then Jesus, we've spent a lot of time and money building up TRPs that was a waste of money. So we need to get to something that is much more accountable. And what you hear a lot of times from the out-of-home or digital out-of-home vendors is that television doesn't get held to this standard. They're not in proximity, and why is it that we're being held to this standard? And the fact of the matter is there is econometric modeling that can justify TV spend, and yet there is also the fact that they aren't held to it. They've never been held to it, and so be it. That's the world that we live in. And there's a way to look at this as a positive. If you're selling gas station television, or if you're selling 7-Eleven network, and you're in 7-Eleven and your product is there, we should be able to know what the sales result ultimately is. If you're in a bar and you can measure sales lift of bourbon that night, let's measure it. Because ultimately, those are the things that I think the CMO, more than understanding what the Nielsen figures are going to be, is going to be interested. We were able to change bottle figures for that evening, and that's a reason to believe.
I completely agree with that. Is that one of the biggest things that I think that the group as a whole needs to do is push more success stories. And it's one thing to have it research-based and show improvement in different metrics and different KPIs, but at the end of the day, every single one of our clients likes to look at how others build business. And if we've got some examples where, you know, even if it's not completely attributed to one particular media form or one particular outlet, to show how, as part of a campaign, of part of an experience, we were able to drive the business, I think that really, really helps our clients become more comfortable with it and gives them a reason to believe. And the last thing I'd like to, you know, tag on to the comments that were just made is that for the longest time, you know, we all criticized television in terms of the research that it had behind it. And, you know, I can't tell you how many sessions like this I've been involved with as people bash Nielsen. But the fact is, TV, with the econometric modeling, with clients' business experience, proved that it can move the needle and it can push sales. Yet now, as new technology and new data has become available, we're not sitting back. Agencies, the TV providers are not sitting back and just relying on what's been available to us in the past. Now we're looking at addressable television. We're looking at second screen research. We're looking at social interaction along with the main screen. All of those things we're moving forward with and trying to understand this new consumer and how they navigate the landscape. Don't be comfortable with the research that you currently have. You have to continue to move it forward, whether it's plain awareness or whether it's interaction, whatever it might be, you have to continue to look forward.
And the technology's there where you can hook up the POS, and you know that if you run a campaign, that you know your sales increase for the day or for the month or for the week. So that's all available. So I guess to your point, television's an older technology, and digital place-based is new, and it's normal that it's held to higher standards.
Well, you raised technology, and I think it's a really good question for this group, particularly because we have two on one end that are WPP agencies between Kinetic and Mindshare. You have an interesting structure whereby you have fairly broad, wide walls between different divisions. And so that makes me wonder about the role of technology and what you guys would say to what role technology could play for digital place-based to a positive effect. And then I think about John here, who took a rather radical move about, how long ago was that? About a year ago, 2 years? Introducing Do Media within the agency. And then, of course, Pierre with VukuNet. Who should we start with on this question? The role of technology and how it might be able to advance the interests of the...
Well, I'll take a shot at it. I mean, we're all trying to figure out in our business how we can do things more efficiently. And technology is clearly a big part of how we're going to do that. And the reality is, as much as, you know, there's a lot of value in the face-to-face selling of different things, the wealth of choices we're trying to evaluate is just overwhelming for anybody. So to the degree we can employ technology to help guide us to the right solutions, I would encourage you to support that. And I know that's another one of those, it's a little scary because you're not there to represent your property. Actually, we had a discussion about this. I mean, there is a lot of inventory that is frankly not worth a discussion. You know, you're not selling everything you've got to have. So some of it, I think, can be moved through exchanges. And I think that's ultimately a good proposition for both the seller and the buyer for what we'll call lower value inventory. Let's just move that and get it done as efficiently as possible. And let's be clear about where the value of the inventory is higher and where it's worth having more of a conversation and worth crafting something that's more of a custom solution. That's certainly what's going on in the digital world on that other screen. Is, you know, that world's dividing into just, you know, sheer tonnage versus big splashy homepage takeovers and other high engagement opportunities. And I think there's an opportunity here as well. Are there different units that make sense to, you know, monetize from your side and just move efficiently through systems while you're still selling more premium opportunities at a higher margin? Well,
so let me ask you this, Lee. How can we get David more, so digital place-based has been assigned to David's unit to buy. How can we get more money into his bucket from the planning units? And can technology play a role by facilitating that, getting something on the planners' desks maybe?
Yeah, Lee.
Yeah, I think we can. I mean, that, you know, the planner has to think of it before they put it on the plan. And, you know, and this is where I'll date myself, but I go back, I'm as old as Sue, so I can do this.
That's really old.
I mean, if I think about, you know, print planning, you know, I started by pulling out a big SRDS
Yep.
and flipping through and seeing who the likely suspects were, just so I didn't overlook them. And then the SRDS went online. And so you know, we're begging for the same sorts of tools across virtually every medium. I really want to make sure as a planner that I'm being as thorough as I can be in the investigation of everything. So I would encourage, you know, support of those kinds of initiatives and putting and arming the planners with that.
Yep.
So we built everything from the ground up. And part of that was, you know, a viewpoint that there was a lot of data that we had, and it was beneficial for us to keep the data in-house and not outsource it. And from being able to manage and leverage our own data, we were going to learn a lot, and we actually have. And so we took it from, you know, first it really started from just a contracting system. So rather than going through DDS, which really you had to do it through print, it didn't work for us. So we created something that was going to work in the out-of-home channel. And then we started building out systems and tools designed specifically for the out-of-home space. And then our proprietary research started to build into that as well. And we've now got it into a point where the next generation of it is, you know, a full-on suite of planning all the way through to buying. A lot of it was designed for efficiency so that people could be thinking rather than spending their time deciphering RFPs. They're still going to have to do a lot of the legwork, but a lot of the work was done so that we can make more of the time that we have. We all know that we're sort of resource challenged to the hilt these days. As it relates to, you know, the digital out-of-home and the digital place-based, you know, we vetted a lot of the ad serving as well as the exchanges. And I agree. I think there's a place for them. I think that they serve a very good purpose, especially when there's distressed inventory out there and it needs to get sold. And there's an opportunity, you know, to make it readily available. I think ad serving, which is something that we're starting to do, is, you know, going to be vital for the industry as well. It gives us real-time optimization. It gives us the ability to ensure that the campaigns are delivering the way that they're supposed to. And it just simplifies everything. So, you know, these are things that the internet figured out very quickly. We're starting to figure out as well. And I think it makes the language consistent for clients as well. So if you can talk about, you know, a server in the same way that DoubleClick exists, you know, it's sort of a no-brainer. They get it. And if we can get the nomenclature to a point where they're more comfortable, I think it only extends the opportunities, you know, for clients as well.
Come on, Pierre, this is the softball.
I know. He lobbed it over to you. I don't think he was here. I don't think he was here after lunch, but he just basically, you know, reiterated what we talked about. So yeah, obviously, you know, we wouldn't have been doing this if we didn't believe in it, and we saw a need to it. I think the challenge, at least from our point of view, and after visiting so many agencies, you know, it's just that the technology evolves so fast. And there's so much technology out there that I don't want to sound, you know, controversive, but I don't think most of the agencies understand the technology, you know, and let alone the network operators. But I mean, it's like it's moving so fast, and we need to do a better job as technology providers to explain the benefits. And you know, when we talk to a network operator, they're worried about commoditization and lowering the CPM, but as you guys stated, I mean, if there's excess inventory, I don't see why it shouldn't be sold that way. So I think there's a lot of benefits to it. The technology's there, but it's very challenging to keep educating because it changes at a pace that's exponential.
Yeah.
Really.
So, John?
Well, we completely agree. our agencies agree with everything that's been said. It just, because of what Pierre was just saying in terms of the changing nature that the technology needs to keep up with, we chose to do a strategic partnership with someone who was already in that space. And frankly, we looked at it as a way for not just for the buyers to streamline things, but also to help the planners evaluate what's out there. And I think Do Media's done a very good job in that regard. And I think that one of the other things that we hope to gain out of that was trying to get some kind of common benchmark, some type of collaboration within the industry, having at least one source where you could go in and see what's available and streamline the buying process and do that all without me having to go to management and looking for technology investment.
Good. Any questions? Can you introduce yourself, name and company?
I'm Jeremy Ozen from Vistar Media.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, Sue. So Sue, your question was started out, how do we get to triple-digit growth? So
Right.
if the overall pie of marketing dollars is somewhat set, but there's a movement from traditional to digital, what has to happen for technology or data to get digital out of home more on the digital side so that this space can see growth like mobile or growth like social does?
I think that's either John or Lee. I think either of you are in a position to take that on.
Well, mobile's growing, but it's still yay big. And I'd say that's another area where, frankly, I don't see the growth moving as rapidly as it probably should, given how much time I see people spending on the streets staring at this thing. The digital thing is a little tricky. I mean, digital has sort of benefited from a radical change in consumer behavior. You talked earlier about television not being held to the same standards that other media have been held to. I would argue that a lot of digital dollars have not been held to the same standards. The e-commerce businesses, the businesses where you've got a considered purchase and people are going to do real homework and investigation and visit multiple websites, those are very accountable, but something like 60, 70% of the dollars are around low interest, impulse type items, and we're still struggling for what the right way to measure effectiveness is there. However, they've still been able to ride the wave of, I see how consumers are spending more and more time online, they're more and more multitasking. Saw one study where people are spending 28 hours a day with media.
Yeah.
That's
called multitasking. Right?
I got to believe that they're still sleeping somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that just being part of the digital mix is the answer. It might be one answer. It might be an answer, especially for, we'll call it the less premium inventory. But I think there's still a big part of the business that's about understanding a client problem, understanding a communications issue, and crafting a solution that's specific to that.
Yeah.
And that's hard work. That's an essay question.
Well, I mean, so when you've said this several times, and that is identifying the problem and then coming up with a solution for it. And identifying that problem usually requires a dialogue or a conversation with people who work on that brand. And I think a lot of folks in this room it's challenging. I think it's challenging for both sides of the equation. I think there are hundreds of salespeople out there trying to sell something to the planners in your organization, and at the same time, there are lots of providers here who would like to get through that door. And until they get through that door, it's hard to identify what that problem is. So do you have any suggestions on how these guys can even start to come to you with a relevant question, I guess, before the conversation even starts?
Well,
how do we start that dialogue?
It's going to vary. Each one of us is going to have our own specific ideas for each of our agencies, but I'll take a page out of the past TV book. And when I was strictly involved with Starcom, one of the things that we've ran across was that our kid clients didn't, unless they had children in the 2 to 5, 2 to 7 area, really didn't understand what was out there for kids.
Right.
Yet they were responsible for the marketing against these kids. And granted, there's fewer kid players out there, but what we ended up doing is we had something that you'll remember is called Kid Fest.
Yep.
And we'd bring in all our kid partners. We'd give them the opportunity to talk to a large room of our clients, of our planners, and even the buyers showed up. And they were able to have a meeting with 150 to 200 people at one time and have a more streamlined process and give them the opportunity to talk about their product. We did the same thing in the past with syndication when no one, we struggled with clients understanding what syndicated TV was and the benefits and how it was different, and we did the same type of thing. And I think that, and it's not a forum like this.
No.
It's got to be with the planners, with the clients, sitting side by side and learning. I really believe a big part of this is education.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a big education story. I think that is, and it occurs to me that, and you're in the heart of, out of home has changed radically in 10 years, but there are a lot of clients still carrying notions of what out of home means, what the limitations are, what the lead times are, what the flexibility is. That we'd love to be the guys to, and we should be. It's part of our role to do that education, but more often than not, we've got an hour to sell a media plan that includes what we're going to do that's smart in television, what we're going to do that's smart in digital, and maybe if we're lucky, a couple of innovative ways we're going to connect with consumers closer to purchase or in a more relevant environment. But back to your question about, how do I know what the problem is? Yeah, there are problems that are specific to individual brands, and you can only know those by having a dialogue. There are also some more general problems that I think you can illustrate. What is it that television isn't doing? What are the crucial segments of consumers that we know are underdelivered, and how does your medium address them? Do we have a nice story there? The other one that occurred to me in looking at some of the things preparing for this, for big national advertisers, the idea of geo-targeting has fallen by the wayside. National cable is so incredibly efficient as a means of reaching customers coast to coast for nationally distributed brands. Not enough advertisers are really even doing the analysis of where are the pockets of geographic opportunity. If they do it, they look at it market-wide, but you guys are much more laser-targeted, not just to a market, but to certain pockets within that market. Is there a more general geographic targeting story you can bring to light about most valuable customers, where they're more likely to live, and how your medium focuses on them more directly? Starting with that kind of a conversation versus, as I mentioned earlier, I've got this new technology, we can now deliver ads in. Okay, I'm not sure what problem I'm solving there, but interesting you can do that.
I think I've heard a couple times from you in different ways, and that is, don't tell me how you build it. Just tell me the value it brings to me, right? I don't want to know how to drive the car. I just want to know how good it feels to be behind that wheel. Yeah.
I see Sunday newspapers. I get the Sunday newspaper in Chicago, and they're FSIs, right? So and I love going through them because it's all the stuff I'll never buy.
You look at FSIs?
I do. Well, but I'm a media guy, so and what I think about every time I look at these is A, I'm not going to do anything with them, and B, and again, love my clients. Why are you spending money here? Because we could have put these on Best Day for Food a few days ago, and we would have had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We would have had you up when people were going home, either on digital boards or on Captivate or on Wall Street Journal. Fantastic. You're leaving the office, you got to go grocery shopping, and it would have solved a problem. But you're in the Sunday paper. Okay, well, great. That's a great idea. There are better solutions, and I don't think we always have to be talking about how are we going to steal share from the internet or how are we going to steal share from television. It doesn't always have to be a video solution. There are other media out there where maybe they're not solving the problems the way that they ought to be or the way that 10 years ago they were. I think there are better ways that it can be done, better ways that the media that we have today can support the client's needs. But are we thinking through it? So we got to think through it.
Any more questions out there? I think we have.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Andrew Kim from PwC Consulting.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello, Sue. So today is like the first time I'm at the DPAA conference, and I'm hearing a couple of common themes about the growth. One was the issue about fragmentation. And the other one was about the collaboration of the industry to work together to move up. To me, that's kind of vague. Is it, when you talk about fragmentation, do you guys see then potentially then consolidation of industry will be one of the key drivers for that? If that's the case, which areas of this industry maybe will be helpful for maybe consolidation can be a key driver to spark the rest of the industry go together? Would it be network? Would it be technology? Some ideas around it?
Thank you, Andrew.
Since I started with fragmentation,
Yeah, you go.
I'll just say a few words. But I think that even on this panel here, and I know there's a debate tonight, so I don't want to start a debate here.
Why not?
Do it. But you
We
know,
got time.
Yeah,
We got time. We got 11 minutes.
David talked about working a planning tool and ad surveying, I think that for me that's a perfect example of fragmentation. If agencies build planning and ad surveying tools and they only address for their clients and the networks they deal with, it only projects more fragmentation. And I think that John went with an external platform, and I personally think that that's a perfect example of why this industry is struggling so much from a technology perspective.
I mean, the external platform idea, I think more and more, that is how we're looking at solutions. We're not at our heart a technology company to begin with. We've learned the hard way what it takes to build technology that very rapidly is outmoded. I mean, I guess as I see it, and this is as a buyer, as a planner, the more you bring, like objects together and package them and sell them collectively, the easier my job becomes. There's been consolidation, for example, in the media that you can target around ski areas or around wealthy individuals. So if you're looking at it from, this is a consumer group, I've got a lot of different means of getting there, and we can talk about the choices there. That's a more interesting conversation. It being as fragmented as it is, I think one of the reasons you can't get to clients, they're afraid, will I really be able to get a full picture of the landscape, or am I going to meet one or two guys and have no idea whether they've got scale, whether they're the most impactful? So the natural inclination is to steer away from it. I can't be thorough, so let me just not bother at all, and I'll rely on my agency to try to be thorough in that regard.
Well, that's okay, because the DPAA can come and do that industry shtick with
Right.
you.
There is a lot of industry sell, though, that needs to go on.
Yep.
Interestingly, I had a client, I mentioned this to you the other day, who said to me, very high-level client, I want to know what's new and different. What are the different ways I can connect with a consumer that I couldn't 2 years ago? And I don't want to hear about anything online. I hear too much about online. Mm-hmm. I think the media landscape has changed. I think there are new opportunities we're not taking advantage of, and I want to know about those. So there is a natural curiosity on the client side to hear about these opportunities, but there's no easy way unless it is, we need to organize more forums to bring the different people together. But it's not our biggest problem as an agency to create those forums right now.
Right.
Pierre, I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, but this is a unique business, right? So out of home in general, digital in particular, I think when we set out, part of the idea was, let's create things that are modular enough so that we're going to be able to add on, and that we're going to be able to fulfill a planner's requirement, our team's requirements, through and to indefinitely. And by no means do I think that we're done either. There will be other modules that will come as you know, the landscape starts to change. And I think our responsibility is to keep up with it. Now, I will not tell you with any certainty that we won't eventually outsource something or we won't eventually partner up with something. But what I will tell you is we've been very successful in building a closed network that is hours and hours alone. And for our clients, that gives some assurance. You know, I was having a conversation actually today with Steve Ridley, who is our global CEO, and we were talking about competition within agencies. You know, we all have that issue, right? And we were talking about systems and tools and firewalls and all the things that we typically go out and talk about. But one of the things he mentioned was, again, DDS, it's a third-party resource. So I have no idea what is happening at the back office at DDS. They have everybody's information. I do know what's going on within hours, right? So the information is hours and hours alone, and I can track it. I don't know what happens at DDS. So there is something beneficial about, you know, having that closed network and having built it of our own accord. And truly, we're not a technology company, but we're starting to become one because the requirements of this business and certainly the data that we're garnering from this business require it. So.
And I just want to be clear that I don't disagree with the data is important. If any company's data or, you know, database and customer mining is truly important. I think the only area where we would disagree is that what you're doing is good for your company and your customer, not for the industry.
Oh, well.
So that would be the only position. I understand the data mining and the benefits of that, but I think that if everybody does their own thing, there's no double click or no Atlas or, you know, everybody does their own thing. It's just not going to fuel as much growth.
Yeah, unless, you know, we sell it and go out and sell it as, I mean, you know, there's a back-end solution that could be done that way as well. So, you know, it's, there's a larger conversation to be had, or if you get really big and, you know, buy us. So there you go.
I don't want to buy it. I have one better.
So a question from the floor. John Muszynski, what keeps you up at night?
Fishing.
Not going fishing is what's keeping me up at night.
It's gotta bum me.
I mean, that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it very, very honestly. And I've been in the business 32 years, and in the early going, and I recognize I was significantly lower on the totem pole back then, but I was able to really focus and concentrate my efforts on the task at hand. The tasks at hand now are so many and so far-reaching that I start to wonder, are there enough hours in the day to do a great job at everything I'm being asked to do? And the answer is, there really aren't enough hours in the day, thus the fishing and hunting get cut back, and you spend more time at the office or at home, and we're all connected, we're always at the office, so.
Yeah, we're all connected all the time.
Yeah.
Huh? What about you, David?
So I was telling the guys that I now spend 4 days a week for the most part in New York, and I miss my son and I miss my wife, and when I'm here I work, and yeah, so what keeps me up at night is the fact that I got the job that I always wanted in the wrong city, it's I wake up at 4 most mornings now, and I don't set my alarm, and I sort of start to stare, and it's what's going to come today. And I know what my to-do list is, and I'm excited about what the day is going to hold, because I'm young and stupid enough that you know, this business is exciting for me. But it's the unknowns that take away from the to-do list and push everything back that sort of blow it all out of the water. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That keep you up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. It's Central Time too. That whole Eastern Central Time thing that really screws you up.
Pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I have to. I never change my watch, and I always have to remember to call my wife because I'm her alarm. So there you go.
Lee?
I've been traveling to Chicago 4 days a week, so I think we need to like fix this. But that's not what's keeping me up at night. As a matter of fact, the travel is allowing me to sleep better at night, although it's often on planes. Many things worry me, but you know, one of the many things, and I thought of it as I was listening to John, are we spending our time and energy on the right things? We have limited time and energy. People are very busy. They're running around crazy. I see them firsthand. But are they really spending the time on the things that will make a difference for the client? And are the clients helping us spend the time and energy on the right things? Or are we just spinning our wheels, churning out meaningless reports and a lot of data without any context? And that's something I'm seriously worried about, whether we're evolving in this world the way we need to live up to client expectations and deliver the smart thinking that we promise our clients.
Yeah. So context does matter.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Pierre?
You know, not a whole lot. Jet lag. Jet lag. I have to go to Japan a couple of times a year, but I'm extremely lucky to have some great people to help with the company on all sides of the company. I think that to John's point, there's not enough hours in the day to do everything, and so I've just learned to not worry about it. I've had great mentors that told me, you know, don't worry about things you can't control, and it's one of the best advice that I ever got. So I mean, you know, I love my job, I love this space, I love everything. So. You know, there's not a whole lot that keeps me up at night.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. So, folks, I think we're coming to a close, and so what I want to do is thank these guys for putting themselves out here and taking our questions and answering so honestly. So thank you so much. Now, if you could just hang for a sec, just a reminder that there are questionnaires on the tables. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to fill them out. They really, your honest feedback will help make this conference just that much better next year. To all the panelists and all the speakers today, I just want to thank you guys for making it a spectacular performance. You did a great job. To the agency and client folks in the room, know that collaboration came up on this panel. We have an agency advisory board that is very, very active. We welcome newcomers, so please, if you have any interest in participating on our agency advisory board, we welcome that interest, and please see me. And we also have recently started a brand advisory group. And it's just getting off the ground now. So if you're on the brand side, please also see me if you have any interest. It is how we grow this sector through collaboration, and we really appreciate your support. So a few thank yous for today before I let you go to cocktails. The first is to NEC for that spectacular video that they produced this morning that started this all off, the evolution video. So thank you very much, NEC. And CNN Airport for producing those spectacular videos. They know how to make television, and much better than I. And so they stepped in and helped us with that production. Thank you, CNN Airport. And there are many, many more people I'd like to thank, including the DPAA Board of Directors. But most importantly, and not to diminish the role of our Board of Directors, but the staff that I work with, I have the pleasure of working with every day. I'd like to thank Noah Klaas, Ajay Durrani, Anna Fountas, Mark Braff, Scott Hunzinger, and I know if I've forgotten somebody, you know, shoot me afterwards, but really who I want to thank, who put 5 years into this space, and he's leaving us at the end of this week, but he was kind enough to stick around for this event, and that's Ryan Pogge. So when we go outside, buy that man a drink. With that, I think I'm going to be the first to the bar. Thank you very much.